In the final decades of the 19th century, as the United States transformed from a rural nation into an industrial giant, two men quietly rose above the noise of factories, railroads, and crowded cities. Their names would become synonymous with American power, wealth, and ambition: John D. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan. They were not merely businessmen. They were architects of a new world, builders of an economic empire that would reshape the future. Rockefeller began with oil, dark, sticky, and unpredictable. Yet he saw in it what others did not: possibility. With meticulous discipline and a relentless focus on efficiency, he built Standard Oil into the single most dominant corporation the world had ever seen. He reduced waste, perfected refining, slashed prices, and absorbed competitors until the entire oil industry bent around him. To some, he was a visionary. To others, he was a monopolist who controlled the nation's most essential fuel with an iron grip. On the opposite side of America's financial chessboard stood John Pierpont Morgan, a banker with a mind as sharp as steel and a personality that commanded obedience. Where Rockefeller mastered logistics and supply, Morgan mastered people. He could calm markets with a single statement, reshape industries with a single loan, and break corporations with a single refusal. Railroads, steel companies, investment houses, Morgan gathered them into vast networks of power that flowed directly through his hands. Their rise was not coincidental. America in the late 1800s was a land of chaos and opportunity. Railroads expanded faster than laws could regulate them. Banks collapsed without warning. Millions of immigrants poured into overcrowded cities seeking work. The government was small, overwhelmed, and often corrupt. In this environment, the ones who could bring order, industrial order, financial order, became indispensable. Rockefeller and Morgan understood this better than anyone. Their methods, however, could not have been more different. Rockefeller worked silently, preferring secrecy and slow, calculated expansion. He avoided attention, rarely spoke publicly, and believed power was safest when hidden. Morgan was the opposite. He was loud, visible, and unafraid to confront anyone: presidents, bankers, or rival businessmen. Where Rockefeller avoided the spotlight, Morgan dominated it. For a time, their worlds barely touched. One controlled energy, the other controlled money. But as America grew, their spheres inevitably overlapped. Railroads relied on oil, banks relied on industrial stability, factories relied on both. Soon, each man was forced to confront a truth. There was not enough room at the top for two empires of this scale. The early signs of conflict were subtle. Morgan-backed railroads complained that Rockefeller's pipeline network was cutting into profits. Politicians whispered that Standard Oil had too much influence over transportation rates. Newspapers wondered if Morgan's banking syndicates were quietly planning to challenge the oil empire. Rockefeller, predictably calm, continued expanding across states, securing pipelines, storage facilities, and refining centers. Morgan, equally determined, began consolidating railroads and steel companies to counter Standard Oil's growing influence. Their rivalry had begun, slow at first, almost invisible. But beneath the surface, the foundations of America's economy trembled as these two titans moved their pieces across an increasingly dangerous board. By the dawn of the 20th century, the nation realized a new reality. The true battle for America's future was not happening in the White House or Congress. It was happening between Rockefeller and Morgan. Their decisions shifted markets, shaped industries, and determined which cities thrived and which withered. The public watched with a mix of awe and fear. Politicians feared being caught between them. Journalists dug for secrets they knew were there but could rarely prove. Two men, two empires, one nation caught in the middle, and this was only the beginning. As the 20th century opened, the conflict between Rockefeller and Morgan sharpened into a quiet but unmistakable struggle for economic dominance. America was becoming a global force, and whoever controlled its oil, railroads, banks, and steel would control its destiny. Rockefeller expanded his reach through pipelines that stretched like veins across the nation. Morgan tightened his grip on railroads, steel, and electricity, creating structures of financial authority no government could match. Their rivalry played out in boardrooms, stock markets, legislative halls, and quiet backroom negotiations. Morgan believed in centralized control through banks and finance. Rockefeller believed in operational dominance through efficiency and scale. Each believed his vision was the only one that could sustain America's explosive growth. Then came the panic of 1907, a financial catastrophe that threatened to destroy the U.S. economy in a matter of days. Banks collapsed, stocks free fell, and factories closed. Panicked crowds formed outside financial institutions. People asked a single question: who will save us? The government, lacking authority and tools, looked helpless. Morgan stepped forward first. He summoned lighting bankers into his private library, locked the doors, and forced them to coordinate a rescue plan. His authority was absolute, his will sharp enough to cut through chaos. At the same time, Rockefeller quietly injected millions into the financial system to stabilize institutions connected to energy and transportation. Some newspapers hailed Morgan as the hero of capitalism. Others whispered that Rockefeller's silent intervention was the true reason the economy didn't collapse completely. The panic changed everything. It exposed a terrifying truth. Two private men had saved the American financial system. The public demanded reform. Politicians acted. Court cases targeted Standard Oil. Investigations probed Morgan's banking empire. Pressure mounted. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil must be dismantled under antitrust law. Newspapers called it the end of Rockefeller's empire. But the result was the opposite. The breakup created multiple massive corporations: Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, multiplying Rockefeller's wealth and spreading his influence across the global energy landscape. Morgan faced his reckoning as well. Financial reforms and the creation of the Federal Reserve diminished the need for a single man to rescue markets. The age of a lone financial monarch was ending, yet their legacies only grew. Rockefeller reshaped global philanthropy, medicine, and science. Morgan shaped banking systems, museums, and international finance. Their rivalry carved the blueprint for modern capitalism, its strengths and its weaknesses. And long after the men themselves were gone, the world continued operating on the foundations they built. Corporations followed Rockefeller's strategy of scale. Governments followed Morgan's strategy of financial centralization. Their influence reached far beyond their lifetimes, echoing in every major economic decision of the 20th and 21st centuries. The battle between their philosophies never ended. It simply moved into new hands, new institutions, and new global power centers. The world we live in today, the markets, the energy networks, the financial systems, still carries the imprint of their conflict. Because Rockefeller and Morgan did not just build companies, they built the modern world. And in the end, when the dust of ambition settled and the engines of the industrial age slowed, one truth remained. The story of America cannot be told without the shadow of Rockefeller and Morgan. Their rivalry pushed industries to evolve, forced governments to act, and shaped a nation that would rise to dominate the world stage. They were not heroes. They were not villains. They were forces, vast, unstoppable, and deeply human in their pursuit of control over a world changing faster than anyone could understand. Their empires may have faded, their companies renamed, their buildings replaced, but the systems they engineered, corporate consolidation, financial centralization, global resource networks, continue to define our lives. Every drop of fuel that powers a city, every line of credit that moves through a bank, every spark of electricity that lights a street at night still echoes with the decisions these men once made. History remembers wars, presidents, and revolutions, but beneath those stories lies another. The quiet war of influence fought in boardrooms, stock exchanges, and private libraries. A war waged not with armies, but with capital, strategy, and unbreakable will. Rockefeller and Morgan fought that war, and the world we know emerged from the battlefield they created. So as we look back on the giants who shaped an empire, we are reminded of a simple truth. Power never disappears. It only changes hands. And the legacy of these two titans lives on in every corner of modern life. A reminder of the extraordinary heights and extraordinary consequences of unrestrained ambition. This was the hidden story, the silent war, the battle that built America, and its impact will echo for generations.